to me, there's no shame in losing to this Ohio State team with that offense.
That's not a big-time program thought process. Big programs find a way to win those games, man. They do. Should you win it? No. This is the year where you have to push through. It is all or nothing for them.
Right.
You have to validate this year. You do, because that narrative will flip right back. I can have a 2-game regular season because that's what they have. Because Iowa's mid, Penn State's mid, Nebraska's dead.
You don't have to beat Ohio State this year for Michigan to get respect.
You got to win a game that you're not favored in. The critical question I have for Michigan fans, and again, we'll go to Sam Flannel. Spencer Raxter's turn in the spotlight comes next segment. Sam Flannel, I go to you. I want Jeff Iafrady's interjections as well. I am of this opinion to where I think that Michigan needs to do it again to validate what happened last year. Now, hold on, hear me out here. Do I expect that? From a talent perspective, no. You lose 2 pseudo first-round NFL draft picks off your defense. It's tough, unless you're Alabama, to be at that level again. It's tough. I understand that. They have a very, very good offense. I think Donovan Edwards is a star. Could be, with the proper usage, could be like a fringe Heisman contender. He won't get that usage, but he could. As a Michigan fan, Sam Flannel, do you, as a fan of Michigan, do you need them to get into that stratosphere again to validate? Because you know what happens. The schedule allows for, they are guaranteed to be undefeated going into the Michigan State game. Guaranteed. They'll be a touchdown plus favorite in that Michigan State game at home. Is that fair?
Yes, that is fair. And do they need to validate? I would say yes to some extent, but I will define validate, at least for this conversation, as you absolutely have to go into the Ohio State game undefeated, ranked like top 4 in the country, and then roll the dice against Ohio State, because they are very talented. That offense, especially if you start J.J. McCarthy, could be explosive, and it'll still be really, really good, even if it is Cade McNamara, just because the schedule allows for it, and the running game could be elite, especially if Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum turn into the 1-2 punch, the best 1-2 punch in the nation. Ohio State, though, that's going to be tough playing in Columbus, something they haven't done since 2000. Although if Michigan does run the table and actually beats Ohio State, wins the Big Ten title, gets to the college football playoff, that would absolutely validate last season.
100%.
That would be where you could finally say Michigan is a top-tier program right now that actually wins Big Ten championships and gets to the college football playoff. That would be where Michigan would get more national respect. But if they at least go into the Ohio State game undefeated with a chance, I will be okay, because to me, there's no shame in losing to this Ohio State team with that offense. But
see, that's not a big-time program thought process, though. You know what I'm saying? See, that's what I'm talking about. Are you going to be a favorite in that game, Jeff? No, they're not going to be a favorite. But you know what? Like, big programs find a way to win those games, man. They do. Should you win it? No. But you got to find a way. The coach has got to find a way. A player's got to make a play to find a way. See, like, and I think, I'm not going to say you speak for a lot of Michigan fans, because the people largely hate you. But, you know, it's one of those things, for me, I think you echo the sentiments of a lot of Michigan fans, where if they run the table and they lose to Ohio State, but they'll go to a Rose Bowl because Ohio State will be going to the playoff, and, you know, it'll be like a backdoor way into the Rose Bowl. Michigan fans will be fine with that, and they'll love that. And no, this is the year where you have to push through, in my opinion. Jeff, am I out of line here, Jeff?
No, you're not. I actually liked what Sam had to say as well. I think every point you made, I agree with. I think for Michigan, they have to be undefeated going into Ohio State, but that's the mindset that Neil's talking about. I agree. I don't think you should go into that game thinking, well, you know, we just can't get blown out. I think you still need to be competitive, of course, but the difference is, and you talked about it in the morning show, Sam, the loss of Aiden Hutchinson now. You're not going to get your 15 pressures. You're not going to have, just the circumstances you had last year. So I think that's the difference. This year, Neil, Michigan, I still think, is if they can make the playoffs again, that's how you establish yourself nationally. So I agree with that. But if you lose, and I think they'll beat State. They have to beat State. Sorry, Spence. They have to.
They do.
They do. And you even would agree with that.
I think they will, yes.
They got to beat them both.
They have to beat them both.
They got to beat them both.
And if you even lose to Ohio State, I don't know if I can let him off the hook.
Well,
I
see,
don't
and
know.
that's the thing too. Like where Sam Flannel says, if you go to Ohio State and lose, then see that's where I don't break off from that discussion. It is all or nothing for them,
right?
And it's the discussion too. And Nico on our YouTube chat thread, last year wasn't a fluke for Michigan, but to get the respect we need, we do have to get as far as we got last year. If we lose to XSU, quote, last year was a fluke. That'll be the narrative.
That's
because
XSU.
Yeah. Well, instead of putting the O there.
Oh,
so you know that bit.
Yeah, that's so
but it is that. Like that very much is the reality. And look, right now, Jeff, is this Michigan team this year, top to bottom, as good as that Michigan team last year?
Defensively, no.
You can't. And again, Ojabo was a first-round pick that
and
got
Dax
hurt.
Hill.
Dax Hill.
Dax Hill's an important
Dax Hill
piece.
was absolutely. He was a high draft pick as well. You don't lose that kind of talent again, unless you're Alabama or Georgia.
But at the same time, like if they lose all those defensive players and they go into Ohio State facing C.J. Stroud, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Travion Henderson, three offensive linemen that are going to be pros, is that really anything to be ashamed of? I get that in order to if
we're not talking about being ashamed though, Sam Flannel. We're talking about you have to validate this year. You do, because that narrative will flip right back, man.
You don't have to beat Ohio State this year for Michigan to get respect. If they do, that would be phenomenal.
If you lose to them, it's the same old thing, Sam. It is.
But people will
understand. It becomes what 4 years out of 21 or
but
whatever.
Ohio State, that offense is just loaded, and Michigan is losing so much on defense. It would take a parlay of one of the new defensive linemen like Mozzie Smith or Mike Morris hitting, and like the linebacking core and the defensive backs actually panning out like we hope they will. That's their way forward on the defensive end. And I just think that Ohio State offense, I'm just being realistic. They need to go into that game undefeated, and if they don't, I will lose my mind. I'll be throwing things. I'll come in here off that loss after like a 2-day bender. But losing to Ohio State will not be anything to be ashamed of at all. Ohio State in Columbus, they haven't won since 2000. That is a stacked team. If they win, great, but they're not as talented.
And Michigan lost both coordinators.
It depends how they lose too. I think the circumstances in which how they lose would definitely matter.
But Neil's saying like if we don't, it's like a failure, blow up the program, they didn't validate. I think that is a little bit too harsh. There's some nuance. If Michigan is not as good as Ohio State and they lose in Columbus, I don't think that's the end of the world. Will it not validate
I'm not saying it is the end of the world. But it's, to me, with that schedule that you have set up, and look, both things can be true. If I were Michigan and I were Harbaugh, or if I ran a college football team, I would do it the same way because there's no penalty. Because I'm Michigan and because I'm in the Big Ten. So I can play Hawaii and UConn and Colorado State, and it doesn't matter. There's no penalty for me. I can have a 2-game regular season because that's what they have. Because Iowa's mid, Penn State's mid, Nebraska's dead. Like the Big Ten is just outside of this top 3. There's nothing certainly that I'm afraid of. Can it be tough? It was tough for them to go in to Penn State and win last year. They had to find a way, but they did because it's Penn State and it's James Franklin, and they suck. Like that's the way that it is. But Eli Garcia here in the YouTube chat thread says, Neil will never be convinced that Michigan is the best program in the country. We could win 3 natties in 5 years, and Neil will still be a hater. You guys don't believe that, do you?
Does anybody believe that? Who believes that Michigan is the best program in the country? Like, nobody believes that because it's not true.
If they won, Eli, if they win 3 of the next 5 national championships, yes, they are the best program in the nation. Yes, they are. Go ahead and bet that one. Please throw your money.
Yeah.
Throw your money on that one. It's just, for me, man, that's where it is. They got to validate, because if not, I'll ask a Michigan State fan this question.
Yeah.
You guys haven't been back, right?
Right.
What's been the narrative?
They can't do it. They're only worried about Michigan. They're not in the national scene. That's what happens.
And that's the same thing for Michigan. They're only worried about Ohio State, but now they beat them last year. But can you do it again this year? And I think someone brought up a point, and I missed the comment. I wish I can go back to it. Nomahe said, if Michigan loses against Ohio State, they'll lose national respect, and everyone will say Michigan can only beat bad Big Ten teams. Like that's
what's on the line,
that's
though,
the narrative
guys.
you're talking about.
But this is what's on the line.
Yeah.
I mean,
Make no mistake.
Did they beat Ohio State in 2021 though? So that doesn't make sense. I understand like 1 year later they have an easy schedule. They should be undefeated, but they did do it in 2021. They are capable. Playing on the road in Columbus with losing 3 first-round picks on your defense, it's not going to be an easy game. It's not something where it's like if you lose that.
Do Alabama fans say that?
No, but Michigan's not Alabama.
Does Georgia say that?
Michigan is not running.
But that's what I'm talking. If you want to get to that level, these are the games you got to win a game that you're not favored in at some point.
If they want to get to Alabama and Georgia, Clemson level, then yes, they need to win that game, win the Big Ten, and go to the college football playoff. I will give you that. Fair enough.